Halito, and welcome to Native Chalk Talk, a podcast by natives for all. Here we're keeping our Native ancestors' stories and history alive, while also sharing with you our Native culture, traditions, and more. I'm Rachel Youngman, a Choctaw originally from Anadarko, Oklahoma. I hope you'll enjoy this journey with me as we learn from our Native American guests. And I hope you'll do me a favor. Feel free to like and share these episodes. I so appreciate it. Yakuki.
There's already pieces that I made that are being passed down. I'd rather take my time with everything because pieces hold significance to the person. It's an incredible feeling seeing someone else wear things that I make.
See and share our stories at togetherwe'remore.com.
Today is all about history and healing. And I am honored to introduce you to Sharon Day, who is Bois Forte Band of Ojibwe. In addition to dedicating her time helping individuals who have HIV, she also leads healing water walks. So, what is a water walk, you may ask? Well, stay tuned to learn more, and you'll hear about Sharon's ancestral stories, the Ojibwe Nation, and her own journey of sobriety and healing. Sharon, thank you so much for joining me. Before we dive into all the good things you're doing, would you share your name in your Ojibwe language and what it means?
Bonjour, and my name is Nagamo Ingan, and that means singing wolf.
Beautiful. You know, ironically, I my dog's name is Nashoba Toloa, and it also means singing wolf in Choctaw. So, in a bit, we'll hear about your clan and tribal nation. But first, you've been living in such a unique and beautiful place for 6 summers now, 40 acres in Minnesota. Can you describe what it's like living out there? And when I say living out there, it's like 50 miles to get anywhere, right?
Well, I'm about a mile out of Center City, which, is a small town, and 12 miles from Forest Lake, which is um, I guess if you want to go to a box store, there's one there. But
Mhm.
it's 50 miles from the Twin Cities.
Okay, that kind of gives me a good frame of reference. And for those of you who are listening and not watching YouTube, feel free to head over to YouTube and you'll see this beautiful background by Sharon. And I think that's snow back there, right, Sharon?
Yeah, we had about 8 inches last night.
As we are recording this right now, it's March and it's still pretty cold outside. So I think this is pretty fitting that I happened upon an article where you were quoted, Sharon, in March of 2019 from the Star Tribune article titled, How Did Minnesota's Indigenous People Survive the Extreme Winters by David Channon. I quote, when the Dakota, Ojibwe, Ho-Chunk, and other tribes lived throughout the state, he's talking about Minnesota, meteorological studies suggest that from 1600 to 1850, the climate generally was colder and wetter than now. And in the article, you told of your grandparents sharing stories such as, and I quote, in the winter, the family lived on the western end, where there were more trees to protect the house from the wind. In spring, they moved to an area with maple trees to harvest sap for sugar and syrup, she said. Summer was spent at a house by the lake. I love that. And getting kind of a little glimpse into your grandparents' world there. So, you also talk in the article about what their houses were made of. Do tell.
So, my grandparents lived in wood frame stick houses that my grandfather built. Um, but my great grandparents, you know, they um, we moved through the seasons, just as I said, and so the houses were wigwams made out of earthen floor with a pit in the center and, for fire. And 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 under the ground they would put also rocks. And so when the fire heated the rocks and then also heated the floor, so kind of a precursor of in-floor heating or radiant
Yeah,
heating,
right.
which I had in the house that I owned in St. Paul. And they used birch bark on the outside because birch bark doesn't mold or mildew, and the water falls off of it. And for the inner, they would use other materials for insulation, but that's how they lived. And in the summer, it was still the same frame, a wigwam frame, but they might like weave some reeds together so there was airflow going back and allowing air to come and go out of the wigwam.
Did you know your grandparents? Did you get to see the wigwam?
No, like I said, my grandparents lived in wood frame houses that my grandfather built, but my great grandparents would have lived in the wigwam. Um, and, and I did not know my great grandparents.
Mr. Channon goes on to say, quote, whole wigwams in the form of teepees were also constructed. Men and women greased themselves with oil and animal fat as a protection against the sun, cold, and insects, which, by the way, makes me think I should probably be doing something like that too. The Athabascan Indians of Alaska reportedly survived that climate's 50 below temperatures by wearing caribou fur, which has a hollow, doubly insulated fiber that sheds water and snow, according to the Alaska Native Knowledge Network at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. The article also talks about the Native American elders forecasting storms, such as blizzards, were preceded by clouds being ushered in from the north, and how woodpeckers sharing a single nest and a single tree being a sign of an incoming harsh winter. So that's something we can all take away and remember. Check out your woodpeckers in your yard, and are they sharing a single nest and a single tree? He also talks about wearing animal skins and using hide for footwear and shelters, as well as warming the floor with fire pits filled with heated rocks. And those were just some of the ways Native Americans kept warm. Very interesting. So the article ends with the words of Native writer Gerald Vizenor stating that a necessity to surviving winter is good storytelling. I quote, it's something you want in adverse situations, and sitting around laughing makes you warm. End quote. And I couldn't agree more. I mean, storytelling is what this whole show is about. So if you want to stay warm, folks, it's all about the storytelling. And I would add, it's important to also preserve those stories, which is what we're doing today. Sharon, I know you have a deep relationship with the land and the water. It's so inspiring. You are the leader in the ceremony of the water walk. So, what is a water walk and what's the meaning behind it?
Yeah. And in our culture, women um, are the it's women's responsibility to gather the water. And so if we have a ceremony, that means, we would make sure there was enough water for the entire ceremony, whether that would be 4 days, 5 days, 10 days. And and so gathering the water isn't simply just gathering it, but it's offering the prayers, making the offering, and singing the water songs. Um, Men have their responsibility, and that is to be the fire keepers. So
Ah,
women, our job is to take care of the water because water is essential to life, and as women, whether we choose to bring life into the world or not, we're the only ones that have that capability. And so it's our responsibility to take care of the water. And probably a little over and almost 30 years ago in our lodge, um, uh, the uh, the chief of the lodge, Bud Waywoodin, reminded us that um, there was another spiritual leader. His name was Philip Deer, and he had came up this way like in the 70s. And at that time, he said, Philip Deer said, he looked around Minnesota and saw all this water. And he said, one day um, water will cost more than an ounce of gold. And I think it was around 1998 when Bud remembered what Philip Deere said, and he said, um, someday, soon, a gallon of water will cost more than a gallon of gasoline. And, he went on to say, you know, what will you do for the water?
We'll be back after this quick break. Are you in the medical field looking for your next opportunity? Listeners, I'm proud to introduce you to Native American veteran owned staffing company, Worldwide Medical Staffing. Owner and CEO Jackson Weaver is a citizen of the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma and is a service-connected disabled veteran where he and his team staff for commercial healthcare and government entities such as the Department of Defense, Department of Energy, and DHS, and specialize in staffing Indian health and VA hospitals nationwide. Isn't it nice to know that our veterans are being cared for by staff who have been handpicked by a veteran who's been in the staffing business for 17 years? Healthcare job seekers, check out these open jobs on www.medical.com. If you're seeking temporary, long-term, or permanent placement of physicians, advanced practice, registered nurses, and more, check out www.medical.com. And Diakoki to our medical professionals and to those who have served our country.
In Minnesota, 45% of all our water is impaired. And he said, what would happen if all of the women of the world said no more to the cities, the mining companies, the corporations, no more. I will not allow you to pollute our water. And I went to help a group of Dakota people who were trying to save a spring in Minneapolis, and there was another grandmother in the lodge, Josephine Mendam and Iban, and she said, heard him say that same thing. What will you do? And so she first cleaned her house, and I mean getting rid of all the toxic cleaning supplies, all the
Okay.
chemicals in her house, and began to preserve and conserve her water. And she lived up in Thunder Bay, and she on the shore of Lake Superior. And after she did that, she thought, "What else can I do?" And anyhow, it came to be that she came to the lodge and she said, "Water has to move to be healthy, and I want to carry the water around Lake Superior. I want to walk the entire Lake Superior, of course, with women helping me. And what do you think of that?" And of course, we all said yes. And I was
Yes.
able to walk with her a couple of days on that walk at the beginning. And then when they were over on the east side, East Shore by Wawa, and I joined again for a couple of days. And um, and it was, it was kind of a lark. It was somebody told you when to walk, where to go at night, where to stay, where we should go for lunch or dinner. And anyhow, after Josephine finished that lake, then she proceeded to walk all of the rest of the Great Lakes. And
Wow.
yeah, she really created a movement. And in 2011, there was a young woman who had a dream about um, bringing the water from um, all four oceans to the center of Turtle Island, which is Lake Superior, according to us. And
Hmm.
so she asked for women uh, to lead the walks from those directions. And, as it turns out, nobody wanted the South because all the tribes have been moved west of the Mississippi, right? And so the Southern Walk would start the most direct path started around Gulfport, Mississippi, and came straight north to Lake Superior. And no tribes in Missouri and Arkansas and, and Mississippi. There's only the Mississippi Choctaw.
Hmm.
And so uh, nobody wanted that route. Well, I had been down there the year before doing some training, so I at least knew the terrain a little bit. And so Josephine sent out another message saying, "Who's with me?" And I said, "I will do it." And so I walked from Gulfport, Mississippi, along with mostly a couple other women, to Lake Superior, bringing that water. And there's something about being with this water that came from the ocean and being responsible for it to get it to its destination. It's almost as though, Josephine put it like this. About the fourth day, she said, you know, we've orphaned this water, and now it's our responsibility to take care of it until it gets to its destination. And then who knows how long it will take to get back home again. But it will confer with the other waters, and it will let them know that they're still human beings who love and care for the water. And so that's how that all began.
That is so beautiful. And to be part of that movement, I mean, it has to mean a lot to you to be able to inspire other women as well. And are there men that also join in this, or is it all women typically?
Men do join us, and um, they carry the staff. We have an eagle feather staff. Women carry the water, and men can carry the staff.
I love this so much. And I'm sure that doing it is very, we're talking about healing today as well. So it's got to be somewhat healing too, right? As you're helping to heal the earth, you're also probably thinking and meditating and all that, right?
Yes, it is a meditation. I ask um, whoever's carrying the water to be silent. And so all you hear are, you can hear the water in the pail, you can hear the wind, you can hear the leaves rustling, uh, you can hear the horses that run up to greet us, and the birds
Oh,
singing, and the hawks calling, and eagles. But I asked them not to speak, to just listen.
mhm.
And so, if we walk 30 miles a day and there's five women, um, that means for at least 15 minutes, um, five times that day, you are being silent. You are just simply moving forward continuously and being silent. And so, and I, um, I started doing transcendental meditation when I was about 22. And, it's about 20 minutes that we meditate a couple of times a day. And so walking, carrying the water, you're meditating
Mm.
um, for 15 minutes, at least 5 or 6 times a day. And of course, there's, different thoughts that come to you, different, uh, one of my grandsons was with me. This is when we walked the Mississippi River south. Um, we just got to almost to the Louisiana border, and there was a ridge, um, and there were all these different trees up high on this ridge, and we were going downhill. And when we finished that walk, he looked at me and he said, "Graham, I just realized like there are all those trees, all these different kinds of trees. Um, they're all like growing next to each other. Like they're all just growing together."
Oh,
And
yes.
for a kid who grew up in the city, that was like this epiphany, that in nature, you know, the in a stand of pine trees, you can also have poplar or maple, or, you know, trees don't just grow unless we plant them like that alone, you know. And same thing with the garden. If you have a garden, you know, there's a reason why we plant corn, beans, and squash together.
Yep. So you mentioned to me one time that people sometimes misunderstand the walk. They think it's a protest or a march, but how do you help people shift their thinking about that?
Well, you know, I try to have an orientation session before,
Mhm.
to sort of, you know, get them orientated to what the walk is like. But sometimes that just isn't enough. You know, they have in their mind, um, and you know, it's a protest or it's a march. And um, but once they start to walk, and you know, when we start in the morning, we start with ceremony. And I ask people, you know, to place themselves in the circle in the same manner in which they're going to walk. So there'll be the first person, the second person, the third person. And then if there's staff carriers, to stand with them. And
Mm,
so I always say, so pay attention to who's in front of you, because that's who you're going to follow. Doesn't matter who's behind you. They have to pay attention to that. But you're going to follow the person in front of you. And uh, and so it takes a little while, you know, to but once they get into the swing of things, you know, it sort of um
yeah.
goes okay. Uh, you know, there have been times where um you know, and generally this happens on like the shorter walks close to a big city where um uh, everyone, you know, it's only going to be a 5 mile walk. Everybody walks together. And and those, you don't get the same um experience that you do when you're on a longer walk, where you're carrying the pail, the water, you know,
Yeah.
5 times a day for, you know, many days, because it's a practice, right? Like you
Yeah.
don't do something once for a day and then it's embedded in you. I mean,
Right.
and I always kind of laugh about, you know, and sometimes like the yoga instructors, you know, how they become experts in this practice because they went through a 12-week course.
Mhm.
And you know, they must be really smart, you know, to be able to figure that out, because it's more, it's a practice, it's a belief. Um, you know, when I ask somebody, uh, like, do you believe that your body's 70% water? You know, do you believe
Oh,
that?
good
If you
point.
believe that, and you believe that water is life, and that, you know, our when we say uh, in the language, water, we love you, we thank you, we respect you. If you believe that, then you must treat every human being that way. I think I
Wow.
was in someplace in Missouri, and a reporter, we'd stopped, and there was a reporter asking me some questions, and he said, "What do you hope to accomplish?" And I said, "World peace." And and um, and uh, you know, some of the walkers were standing around listening, and they said, "Did you say world peace?" And I said, "Yes." And I said, because if you believe you are the water, and you are the water, and you are the water, that, and then, and we love the water, and we respect the water, and we're grateful to the water, then if you really truly believe that, you would afford every human being with love and kindness and generosity. And
Well
it
said.
wouldn't matter what color their skin was. It wouldn't matter what gender they were. It wouldn't matter if they were gay or
Mhm.
non-binary. That would all be irrelevant. So yes, if we could teach people through this um, practice, we could um, achieve world peace. And I remember when I was studying TM, that one of the things they told us through their research was that in large cities where 10% of the 10% of the population was practicing meditation, um, the violence levels went way, way down.
Oh, interesting.
Mm.
Well, and I love what you said about the water. It's the one thing it's something we all have in common. Water is life, and we're all made of, what did you say, 70% water?
98% at inception.
98. Wow.
And, and we have to maintain um, a certain level of water. And Dr. Emoto used to say, once you hit that less than 50%, you're on your journey to the next realm, so drink water.
Mm. Drink water. Well, I applaud you in your quest for world peace, and you're doing it in a very peaceful and kind way, and helping us all kind of stop for a moment and think of it in a way that actually is tied to your own tribe and the customs of the women being about the water, the men, the fire, the women, the water.
Stay tuned for part 2 of this series.
Thanks for listening to Native Chalk Talk. Be sure to join our community on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and check us out at nativechalktalk.com. Stay tuned for the next episode. You're going to love it. Yakoki. Thank you, my friends.